Fans TV, for the fans, by the fans.
A very good evening to you all. Welcome to Sky Blue Fans TV. My name's Ken Stewart. We've got a special edition for you tonight. We've got a special person coming on, a man that knows a lot about Coventry City is coming on live tonight. I know it's been a bit boring all week with no football, international break and all that. And hopefully this will liven you all up tonight. I'm sure this man knows quite a lot about Coventry, and certainly more than me. I'm going to introduce our also the other guests for tonight. Claudio, good evening, Claudio.
Good evening.
Good evening, mate. Not too bad, mate. Now, the guy we're just about to introduce certainly knows his stuff, doesn't he?
Oh, definitely. He's a top man. In fact, everything I know is probably reading his books and in depth. And listening to my old man, so that's how my history comes from.
Yeah,
he's a great guy. Let's get it. Shall we get him on?
Yeah, let's get him on then, Claudio. I'll hand it over to you then, and you can introduce him.
Right, introducing to the Sky Blue fans, Jim Brown, a fantastic guy who knows everything about there is to know about Coventry City and more. Evening, Jim.
Good evening.
Good evening, Jim.
So what do you do on the international break?
Good question. I can't stand international breaks.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not a big fan of international football, really. So really just a weekend off. Bit of reading, a bit of research, and put my feet up a bit, really.
Well, what I want to ask you to start with is... obviously, I think what most people like to know is when did you start following the Sky Blues, and what made you want to start to write about the club?
Good question. Well, I grew up in Leamington, Whitnash really, and I first got into football when I was quite young. My dad used to buy me the football annuals, and I've still got them actually from the late 50s, where I've written in, I've got the league tables there, and I've written in all my little notes on them. But my first football love was Lockheed Leamington, actually. My parents used to let me go off when I was about 7 or 8 years old with a friend. We'd walk up to the old windmill ground, and I had many great days watching Lockheed. They were a fantastic team back then. I don't think I ever saw them lose at home in about 4 years. They won the West Midlands League, they won the Birmingham League, they won the West Midlands League, they won the Midland League. They were just fantastic. But I got to a stage where I think it was 1962. Lockheed got to the final of the Birmingham Senior Cup, and the final was against Rugby Town, and it was to be played at Highfield Road. And so the first time I went to Highfield Road was actually to see Lockheed play. And obviously it was a small crowd, but I was only 9 years old, and just seeing this massive stadium, I just thought, this is fantastic. And then I think it was about 2 weeks later, my dad said, would you like to go and watch Coventry City? They're playing Burnley in a game it was the opening of the Coventry Cathedral, the new cathedral. And well, Burnley, they were a top side then. They'd just been in the cup final, lost to Spurs, but they had a guy called Ray Pointer at centre forward, he had blonde hair, and he was like every schoolboy's sort of dream, and he was up there with players like Bobby Charlton, Jimmy Greaves, these sort of Johnny Haynes, these sort of players. And I said, we can see Ray Pointer then. My dad said, yeah. So we went along. Now the crowd was only about 10,000, I think, but to see Coventry City, and they hadn't changed the sky blues in that. They had the white shirts with a blue neck, but they're up against Burnley playing in their claret and blue, the famous claret and blue shirts with white shorts. And that was my first Coventry City game. And I just fell in love, you know. I had to go back. So the next season we didn't go to many games, but we did go to my dad queued up to get tickets for the Man United Cup game. Stood in the rain for 2 hours, getting absolutely drenched on the Kop. And we watched City lose to Man United. But, yeah, the atmosphere that day was fantastic, 44,000 in the ground. So I'm sorry I'm giving you my sort of bit of history about why I support Coventry City. My love for stats came, well, just to carry on the story, each season I saw more games, and I suppose 64-5 I saw a lot of home games, a couple of away games. I think I went to Birmingham, and maybe 65-6 I saw virtually every home game, and 66-7 I saw every game, and I saw quite a few away games that season. And I'd still go to Lockheed if City were away and I couldn't get there, because I used to go to school on a Saturday, so I had difficulty. We had games on a Saturday afternoon, and I could skip off games quite easily and go off at 12:30 and cycle into Leamington, get the Priory coach to Highfield Road. But then we won promotion, obviously, and it was a lot harder. The school was getting stricter about people skipping off, and I twice got caught for skipping off. I remember going to the Leicester away game just before Christmas that first season in the First Division, and I had to skip off after the mid-morning break, cycled into Leamington to get the coach to Leicester. Well, some master saw me down the Mighton Road, and Monday morning I got a call. The headmaster, you've got to go and see the headmaster. Well, I got the cane for that, which was worth it actually, to see City get a point at Filbert Street. So I think it was the following summer, 68, when I got involved with the stats. And what I did, I really wanted to know more about the history. And a big influence on me was a guy called Rod Dean. And we got to know each other during that first season in the First Division. And he was fascinating. You know, he could talk about the 1950s. And his dad used to go with him, and his dad could talk about the 1930s, you know, Clary Borton and John Lauderdale and players like this. And I thought, I'd really like to get to know more about the city, about the history of the club. So I wrote to Derek Henderson, who was the Coventry Telegraph sports writer, a football writer, covered City games. And Derek Henderson wrote back, and he said, a typed letter, a really smart typed letter. He said, if you're interested in looking through my scrapbooks, please let me know. You can come to the Telegraph offices on a Saturday and look through my scrapbooks. So I went over there, and he was a fantastic guy, and he was going off. It was in the summer, so after the season, and he'd come in specifically to meet me, and he took me into this room, and he showed me this big pile of scrapbooks, one per season, which he kept for Coventry City. And he left me in this room. He said, I'm going home now, but when you're finished, he said, tell the guy over in the corner, he must have been the weekend guy, and he'll lock up and everything. So I was there all day, and I went back 4 or 5 Saturdays running. And at the end of it, I had, he'd been the football writer since 1958. So what I did, I wrote down all the fixtures for every season, the scorers, I made a little grids. I've still got the handwritten grids I made of all the appearances and the attendances And that's what got me started. And it sort of blossomed from there, really. As I said, I've still got those books that I made at the time. And the scrapbooks were absolutely brilliant. And when I got a call from Andy Turner, the football writer at the Telegraph, it's about 10, 12 years ago. And he said, Jim, we're moving offices from the Telegraph offices in Corporation Street. He said, we're downsizing. I've got all the scrapbooks here. We wondered if you would like them. Don't worry if you don't. We'll put them in the skip. I said, don't put them in the skip. I'll have them. So I drove over and I picked up all the scraps. And they were the scrapbooks from when I'd been to the Telegraph offices in 1968. So I've still got them all now. And when Derek Henderson left at 73 time, the people like Neville Folger and Adam Dent, they kept the scrapbooks going. So I've got all those scrapbooks out in my studio, and it's like a gold mine. To me, it's gold. It really is.
It's interesting you mentioned Derek Henderson and Neville Folger, because they're the two books I bought, I think, regarding any kind of history to do with Coventry City.
Yes.
Nobody really wrote about Coventry City, did they?
No, they didn't. No.
So what made you? I mean, the first book you wrote, what made you start there, basically? Well,
it's interesting you mentioned Neville Folger, because it was that book that sort of prompted three of my really good friends from the London Supporters Club. Rod Dean I mentioned before, David Brassington, and Don Chalk. And I'd left London. We're talking about the early 80s now. I'd left London, moved up north. We're still involved with the London Supporters Club and still close to them. We sat next to each other in the stadium. And this Neville Folger book came out, and we all said, this is not good enough. There were pictures in there which weren't Highfield Road, purporting to be Highfield Road. And we were so annoyed this book just wasn't good enough. So we said, we've got to do our own. Well, yeah.
There you go.
It was late 80s, well, late 70s or early 80s, wasn't it? Yeah.
79, yeah.
79. So my sort of business career had taken off. I just didn't have the time to get involved. But the other three guys got together and they came up with Singers to Sky Blues. You read that book, haven't you? It's a fabulous book. It was the first real history of the club. Yeah, brilliant. And when that was a great success, we said, what we should do is, we've got all the stats. They'd done a lot of research at Colindale. I got all the modern from 58 right through to the modern day. So we got together and we produced the Breeden book, the complete record. That came out in 92, I think, 91. And that was a lot of work, I can tell you. And I remember Don Chalk did a lot of stuff on the Singers' Days and the pre-World War I stuff. It was a hell of a lot of work, but it was a great success. We sold quite a few copies of that, and it goes for a few bob even now, actually. So that's how I got into the writing, and then a few years later, I remember going into. I hadn't thought about doing any more books, but I was in a bookshop one day, and there was a book published by Desert Island Books. I think it was the West Ham history, and on the back it said, "Coming soon, other clubs, and including Coventry City." And I've wondered, who the hell is writing this book? So I rang up, I found the number for Desert Island. I rang up, I got this guy, Clive Leatherdale, wonderful guy. And I said, who's doing this Coventry City book? He said, well, no one at the moment. He said, do you want to do it? I said, yeah, I'll do it. So even though I was trying to have a business career, I had quite a high-powered job at the time. I managed to do the Elite Era, and that gave me a lot of pleasure doing that. Yeah.
We've got a question from Neil. Shall I bring him in?
Yeah.
Hi, Neil.
Yeah, well, there I am. Hi, good evening, chaps. You all okay? Yeah. Hi, Jim. Nice to have you on the show. You sort of touched on it a little bit in the story that you've just been sharing with us. And my question really is, over the years, you must have seen so much change from newspaper clippings to the scrapbooks to now super fast electronic media. So when you're collecting history, stories, stats, the immediacy of everything these days and how fast information flows versus writing letters and telexes and fax machines and things like that of years ago has obviously changed the way that you operate. And I just wonder which method do you actually prefer? Which method of getting the stories and the information did you enjoy the most? Did you enjoy the old-fashioned way, or do you like the speed and the flexibility of the new digital world that we're in?
It's a really interesting question, Neil, because you talk about the old days, but I remember in the early 70s, living in London, sometimes most times you didn't know the score of a City game until 5 o'clock or 5:15 on the BBC. And as for a match report, the papers were regional, so the London papers would only have the London match reports. And I'll tell you what I used to do in those days. I worked in the stock exchange, and they had a library there with all the newspapers in. Well, I used to spend an hour in the library every Monday morning reading. They had the Birmingham Post in there, so I could go. They definitely have a report on the City game. So I used to go and find out what had happened. There was we were on TV very little in those days. The big match didn't show us unless we were playing in London. So if I wasn't at a game, particularly if it was an away game up north, I was restricted to that. But I love the old match reports in newspapers. I still do research now. I've got a subscription to the British Newspaper Archive. I've been doing some research, recently into, cities' reserves in the 1970s. And the pink are all on the British Newspaper Archive, and that's absolutely wonderful to see that. And of course, the match reports. Derek Henson would do the pink report, which was like minute by minute. 16th minute, Steve Whitten hit a thunderbolt shot, and you get the whole thing in the pink report. And then on the Monday night, you get the detail, the analysis, really good analysis, and comments about every player in the side. Humphreys and Rees caused damage down the wings, but Ronnie Farmer had a quiet game. Those sort of things. Nowadays, we get a report on. I get the Telegraph, called Coventry Live, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's appalling. It really is appalling for any real fan. You get no analysis. The club's website, the club's report is very poor. And I, to be honest, the best analysis I find these days is Sideways Sammy. I don't know if you read his match reports, but he does a really good analysis of what's gone on, looks at the bigger picture, looks at individual players, comments on them. It's a good report, but it's a shame we've lost that, the old-fashioned match report, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, and I think it's great to be instant and up to date, and even standing on the terraces and seeing what else is going on in the league. It has its place, but equally, I think some of it does spoil some of it, because even in the time I've been following football, I can remember on the Saturday evening being in the pubs and the clubs with my dad and my uncle and my granddad, and everybody waiting for the guy to arrive with the pink. And they'd have the excitement of going to the match, and then then there was a sort of a second buzz on, hey, the Pink's here, and wherever you were, it sort of went quiet for half an hour while everybody had got their head in the newspaper. And I think sometimes the immediacy of the digital world has spoilt that for us. So it's really interesting, Jim. Thank you.
Yeah, but and as you mentioned about not getting team match information. Now you can, I can watch away games on iFollow if I'm not going. We can watch the Sky highlights, at 6 o'clock or whatever. There's so much of it, isn't there? There's so much in all these podcasts as well. There's so many, aren't there?
In fact, there's so much of it. It even means that all our games aren't on a Saturday anymore, and there's another debate.
No. Of course, these days as well, you've got all the armchair fans who think they know better than the manager. They could pick a better team, they could have better tactics, and and half of them I don't think have been to the game.
That's it. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm driving home after a match on a Saturday, I flick the radio on whilst I'm queuing in the car park, and I hear some of these guys talking, and I'm thinking, well, which match did you watch? Because it wasn't the one that I saw.
There's a few of them.
Absolutely.
Jim, do you think with the reporting now that maybe local media probably are frightened to actually report things with a bit more critique than they did in the old days?
I don't know, because Derek Henderson used to travel a lot with the team. So, if he criticised Ronnie Farmer for, giving a penalty away or something before, the previous game, he had to go and face Ronnie Farmer on the team coach the next game. So, I'm sure it was difficult for him, but I think he was very critical at times. Yeah. These days, I don't know. I really don't know. I think I hate to say it, but I just think it's a job.
Right, yeah.
I think it's a job.
We've got another question coming in from Luke. Miles will bring him in. Far away, Luke. You're on, mate.
Hi, Luke.
Luke, good evening.
Hi, you're right. Nice to meet you, Jim.
No, nice to meet you too.
My question is not really about sort of the club, it's about the city. I'm very intrigued about sort of our medieval past and sort of, talking a long time ago. What's the real story behind the nickname True Blue, and also what was important with Coventry when it comes to like royalty and Parliament?
Oh, it's a good question. I'm certainly not a historical expert on Coventry, but True Blue, I think I'm right in saying it was the blue dye that was used in the city. I think it was famous for that blue dye. I think that's the answer. As far as the royalty element, you go back to the Civil War times, doesn't it? Was Coventry? Claudio can help. I think Coventry was a royalist stronghold in the Civil War.
It was, yes, it was. Definitely.
You know, I don't know if Luke, if you've studied the civil, you know, the English Civil War in 1640s, but you know, there was a lot of nasty fighting around the Midlands. You know, there was a big battle near where I live, down near Edge Hill. There was a Battle of Edge Hill in 1642 between the Royalists, which was King Charles I, and Oliver Cromwell's army, who were the Roundheads against Charles's Cavaliers. And that was the Coventry was, you know, heavily involved in that at the time. Does that help?
Yeah, it does a bit. It's just when I read about some of the history, was like Spongate, and you saw the city attack, like the city wall, and you know, because especially was being so close to Warwick and Kenilworth, and both having two major castles at the time, that it's always intrigued me. And you know, it's no. I know obviously probably wasn't the dye in the cloth wasn't probably sky blue, but he was thinking, you know, we were called the Sky Blues, and Coventry was sort of, you know, true blue, and was to do with I think it was the dye. It's just, but that's helped great. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's interesting you say about the old city, you know, being like Warwick and Kenilworth. Yeah, they say that you know, I didn't see it, but they say that before the Second World War, Coventry had some of the finest architecture in Western Europe in terms of medieval buildings, but it was largely destroyed by, you know, by Hitler's bombings.
Yeah. I mean, that cathedral was beautiful. When I look at the pictures, some of the black and white drawings, I just wish it had never been bombed. You know, I could go look at it now.
Yeah.
I love seeing old cathedrals, old sort of architecture. But yeah. The new one's nice, but it's too modern for a cathedral for me.
Yeah.
The expression "sent to Coventry" was from the Civil War. That's where it came from, where the prisoners were held in Coventry. They were sent from Birmingham to Coventry, and that's where the expression comes from. Sent to Coventry, and that was from the Civil War.
Yeah, because we wasn't very nice and pleasant to them, was we?
No. Thanks for that, Luke. We've got a question coming in from Chris Baker. I'll bring Chris in.
I'll leave, guys. I'll leave.
Everyone, you all right? Good evening.
Hello, Chris.
Nice to meet you, Jim.
Nice to meet you too.
I suppose my question really is sort of like twofold. So obviously, you've done a lot of projects, a lot of books for Coventry City, haven't you, for the club? So I'm kind of wondering how much sort of work and research additionally has to go into like each individual project. And I suppose I'm wondering as well which one you enjoy doing the most. If you have a specific favourite.
Well, the first, I'll answer the second part first if I can. I think the first book, the Breed and Complete Record, I think gave me the most pleasure, and it was working as a team. You know, we each had our area of expertise. We all did our own research and brought it together into the book, which, you know, it was very pleasurable working as a team with three really good friends who had the same goal and aims as I had. As far as how much work goes in, well, it varies really. You know, I did the illustrated history, and that required a lot of work gathering photos together, but then not as much work actually putting the captions to the photos, compared to, say, the Elite Era, where, you know, I had every lineup, both teams for 34 years, which was a lot of keying in, and there wasn't much cutting and pasting. It was keying in data. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. It does. Yeah.
Funnily enough, I don't know if any of you guys know, but I also did a book on Huddersfield Town, in the 1920s. And that book gave me a lot of brain. I'm not a Huddersfield Town fan, but the story behind the book, which was Huddersfield were the best team in the world, effectively, in the 1920s. They won the league 3 years running, two years under the famous Herbert Chapman, who went on to manage Arsenal. And I did a book just specifically on those 3 years. And that was quite a bit of research. It was really fascinating. And it was learning about a club I knew very little about, and some fantastic stories behind it. Yeah.
That's interesting. I actually didn't know you'd done one for Huddersfield Town, actually. So that's something new learned.
Yeah.
No, great. That's thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, Chris. Thanks very much, mate, for coming on. Yeah. Thank you. I was going to ask a quick question just before we have a break, Jim. Obviously, Mark Robins is the manager now. He's done a fantastic job over the last few years. A lot of the fans are putting a bit of pressure on him now because the team are not doing as well, should we say, as fans expect them to. Where does he rate among your best managers along the way? You've seen plenty come and go. Where's Robins in your eyes? Is he up there with the best?
That's a good question, a really good question. I think, alongside Jimmy Hill and John Sillett, for the post-war era, or if you like, the modern era, I think he's got to be up there. He won 2 promotions, which is the same as Jimmy Hill. John Sillett won the FA Cup and was never involved in a relegation battle. And he had us hitting above our weight, really, didn't he? For the years that he was in charge. There's little to choose. I don't think. I think they're all 3 of them are great. And I think the interesting thing about the criticism now is if you go back to 1966, to October, November 1966. It was Jimmy Hill who was getting the brickbats. He was under a lot of pressure because he was expected to win promotion that season, and we were struggling down in 7th or 8th position and not leading the way. And he'd fallen out with his star player Ian Gibson, so he wasn't the fans. A lot of the fans were very critical of him in that season. Yeah.
Fans can be very fickle, can't they, at times?
Yeah.
Sorry, Claudia.
He wrote a little article in the programme, didn't he, that season at the back end, where it's a conversation between fans, wasn't it, about the performance early in the season?
Yes.
With JH saying, just wait and see kind of thing. It was quite a clever bit of...
very clever.
Very clever bit of self-advertising, I suppose, or self-appreciation. He's very good at that, Jimmy Hill.
Was that the conversation with his daughter?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. Where his daughter said, "Why are they booing Ken Hale?" Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very clever.
Fabulous. Yeah, fabulous stuff.
Yeah, I suppose it's similar if Mark Robins had done the same last season, where he was getting criticised at the start of the season, at the end of the season in the programme put, look how well I've done. If everyone's just patient, you can see what's going to happen, basically. Who was your star player then? Your actual favourite player? Who was the one you wanted to see play?
You mean my favourite all-time player?
Yeah.
Oh, Ian Gibson. Yeah, Ian Gibson was my favourite player. I just loved him, and he really was a good player. There was one particular game. It's my favourite all-time game, actually, when we beat West Brom 4-2, 68-9 season, when Ernie Hunt got a hat trick, but Gibson was actually on the transfer list, and I think Noel Campbell had left him out the first 2 games, and he just came back and just proved all the doubters wrong, proved Campbell wrong. And he was just out of this world. But Tommy Hutch is not far behind, and Roy Barry as well. I'm a very big Roy Barry fan. In the modern era, well, Gus Hamer was a class player, a really class player.
I think sometimes it's when you're young, you just have a boyhood hero. Mine was Colin Steen.
Yeah.
I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
I just remember him being a big signing for us coming from Rangers. And it's because of that I started looking out for Rangers results.
Yes.
Colin Steen had played for Rangers, and it's just stuck with me. Colin Steen, it's the first person that comes to mind. What about you, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Tommy Hutch sort of era, because I started sporting around the Tommy Hutch sort of era. He was a fantastic player, and I say he's probably struggled to beat him, really, Tommy Hutch, on that day. And I agree with, again, Gus Hamer in the modern day. For me, was up there with a class act. But we had quite a few, didn't we? If you look back, Robbie Keane, some fantastic players. Ian Wallace for scoring all them goals.
Yeah.
There's quite a few, isn't there? There's loads we can go down the list, can't we? Over the years, some fantastic players have played for this club. So it goes on and on.
Who's your favourite player currently?
Currently, in the current team, I've got to say O'Hare. Although he's not playing at the moment, I think he's just a little magician, and he creates so many chances for us. And when he's not playing, as he isn't at the moment, fully fit, we know when he's, we certainly miss him, don't we? Because there's not enough, for my opinion, there's not enough chances being created at the moment for the forwards to get the goals, and that's where the problem is.
I just hope
certainly Ben Chief as well is another one. Ben Chief is a fantastic player. He does a lot of work off the ball, what a lot of people don't realise. But for me, at the moment, I'd say currently O'Hare.
It's interesting. Yeah, Ben Sheaf is my favourite player. I've admired him from the day he came. I know he got a lot of criticism that first season.
He did, yeah.
I remember seeing him play for Doncaster against us at St Andrews, and he impressed me that day. He must have only been about 19. And I've admired him ever since, and I think he got unwarranted stick. But I think he's my favourite player currently. Really good. And the trouble is, though, he plays in midfield. Therefore, people expect him to roar forward and score goals. And, he's a defensive midfielder. And like Liam Kelly's never scored a lot of goals, and Ben Sheaf will never score a lot of goals. He's a defensive midfielder. I always think back to, who was that Chelsea holding midfielder who?
Sen Makalele.
Claude Makalele.
Yeah.
He never gave the ball away. And he just sat there. Did he ever score a goal for Chelsea? I don't think he did.
Not many.
But you need players like that. So I'm a big Sheaf fan. When it comes to O'Hare, my worry is he ever going to recover that form? If you look at our history, there's been a lot of players who've never, had a
Jody Jones was one of them.
And they've never quite been the same. I think back to Dean Emerson. He was on the verge of the England squad when he did his knee, and he came back, but he was never quite that same player. Graham Oakey was another one. He was a top class fullback until that injury. To Mick Ferguson as well, you could throw in there. He had a bad injury, never quite the same.
I remember Danny Thomas, didn't he have an injury as well? Danny Thomas.
Well, Danny never came back.
He never came back, did he?
No,
he never came back.
Never came back, and he's one of my favourite all-time players.
Yeah.
He was taken out by Gavin Maguire, so it's it was.
Unfortunately, didn't come back. You're right.
So my fingers crossed for Callum.
Yeah,
and, the modern game is so fast, and the fitness needs to be absolutely tip top, doesn't it, to play in the Championship? And that's why I think it's taking so long for him to get up to speed and back in the groove. I hope he does come back strong, though.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's great. That's the first half gone. That went quick, didn't it?
Right. Okay.
We're going to have a little break. We're going to have a little ad break. We're going to show some goals as well, which will be interesting.
Okay.
And then we've got loads of questions lined up with people messaging in with questions.
Okay.
So we'll go through a few of them. So we'll have a couple of minute break, and then we'll be back shortly.
All right. I'll just stay here. And
you stay there. We'll be back shortly.
All right.
Sky Blue Fans TV, for the fans, by the fans.
Okay, welcome back to Sky Blue Fans TV. We've got a little treat for you now. We've got some fantastic goals to have a look at, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. Have a look at these.
Rankin doesn't look too happy about the position of the wall. Hunt! Oh, what a goal!
Devonshire enjoyed that little run until he was felled by two men. Blair through the middle for Thompson. And Thompson's got one back for Coventry. And he feels a lot better about life now.
But there was no doubting the outcome when, 1 minute into the second half, the creative Terry Gibson fought his way through, leaving Cyril Regis to score his second and perhaps last goal for Coventry.
Regis, Houchin, Bennett. Houchin! Brilliant goal!
Chipped in once more. Orlickson, poor header. Straight to Dobson! And Livingston!
Gary McAllister, the Coventry captain. Whelan. McAllister again. Dublin! It's there! And Coventry have taken the lead after 13 minutes. Dion Dublin's 14th goal of the season. He was left alone by the Tottenham defence. And Coventry have made the perfect start.
Doyle, Jukovic with a chance to run. Will he see that?
Wow, what a fantastic collection of goals there.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to pick a favourite. What's your favourite of that, Jim?
Oh, goodness. Goodness me. Well, the last one was brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was some goal.
That was
fantastic. I did with the Jordan Willis goal.
Yeah, it was a very good goal, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just what a day that was. That was just a fantastic day.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many there to choose from. I mean, you're going right back to that epic FA League Cup semi-final against West Ham, if you remember when we were 2-0 down and we come back and won 3-2. That was probably one of my best games ever I've witnessed. Gary Thompson scored at both ends, didn't he? If you remember.
He did, yeah. I was right in front. I was in the West End, right in front.
Yeah, I was in the West End, probably near you. Yeah. Yeah. I was there. That was a fantastic game, and unfortunately, we couldn't quite. We only needed a draw, didn't we, to go away and draw at West Ham, and we lost 2-0, didn't we, in the end?
Yeah, well, we could have. We were 1-0 down and hanging on at the time, weren't we?
Yeah,
when Jimmy Neighbour scored that offside goal.
Yeah, that offside goal. Yeah.
Jim, whose kit were we wearing that night? Whose kit did we borrow?
Yeah, we had a yellow kit on, but I don't know whose. It was yellow, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It wasn't an egg timer kit. When that wasn't an Admiral egg timer kit, was it? It was plain yellow shirts. I don't know, to be honest. I don't think it was borrowed from anybody. I think it was probably they organised it as a special kit for the night.
Yeah, because it didn't. It just had a badge on the elephant badge. That's all, wasn't it?
It was worn again. It was worn again. I can't remember where, but
I think West Brom. I think it's West Brom we wore it at, Jim.
West Brom Way, possibly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you, I'll look it up because I can look it up quite easily.
Yeah.
Claudio, anyway. Yeah.
We got some more questions, Claudio, from Eric Howell, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got Eric Howell, Astro from Australia.
From Australia.
Goodness me.
Yes. Right. So he said, how would you compare the 81 semi-final squad to that of 87 cup-winning squad? So the youth of 81, I suppose, against the Bobby Gould put together squad of 87. Yeah. How would you compare them?
Yeah, I think the difference was experience. The 87 team was pretty experienced, wasn't it? Whereas the 81 team were almost all homegrown kids, with Jerry Daly and Steve Hunt. It was almost all homegrown kids, wasn't it? Haitley, Danny Thomas, Les Seeley.
Yeah.
Andy Blair. I know Andy Blair had gone by then.
Jerry Daly.
Yeah, Jerry and Steve Hunt were the only sort of purchases in that team, and the only ones with real experience, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think with Jimmy Hill? I mean, he's a great manager, but as a managing director and then chairman, do you think he just got it wrong in the early 80s regarding player contracts, and then of course the all-seater stadium? It just seemed to go from, well, it just fell away really, didn't he? I felt he lost his way. I don't know what you think.
I think you're right, Claudio. It was a mess that season, wasn't it? The 82-3 season, because they sold Gary Thompson, and it was almost like Sexton gave up, and the players revolted, and they had a terrible run of games without a win. We're actually drifting into relegation zone when they won 3-0 at Stoke, and it was a mess that season. And I think it was Jimmy just, I don't know what was in Jimmy's mind, to be honest. He let them all run their contracts down. I don't know, Claudio. It really was a mystery.
I've got a question from Paul Hughes. Hi, Jim. I have an old spoon with a Coventry City crest on it with us called the Bantams. When and why were we called the Bantams? And I think it was Jimmy Hill who changed our name to the Sky Blues.
Yeah, we were the Bantams until 1962. I actually don't think it was Jimmy who came up with that, the Sky Blue nickname. I think it was Derek Henderson who came up with it. Obviously, Jimmy changed the kit colour to Sky Blue, but I think the nickname came from Derek. And the Bantams, the name the Bantams came from the days before the First World War, when the team always had a small team. They were all slight players, and the Bantam is like the small chicken. So that's where the that's where the name came from. They were nicknamed the Bantams because of their lightweight, really.
Got a question from Cobb Andy. Jim, when was Dietmar Brooks' testimonial? That was my first time at Highfield Road and the start of my love for the Sky Blues.
Okay, Dietmar's testimonial. I think it was 1973. I'll have to look it up. Hang on. I think it was 1973 off the top of my head. It was against Charlton Athletic because that's where Dietmar went to from Coventry, joined Charlton, and then Charlton brought the team up. 1972 it was, a year out. Yeah. And Charlton beat us 4-3. Sadly, there are only just over 4,000 people present.
Oh, there you go. Okay. We've got another one here from Mark Cunningham. Jim, what do you remember from Highfield Road when it was sold under our feet? What about all that? Under the Richardson era, I presume, wasn't it? When Highfield Road was so tragically sold. What's your memories of that and your feelings at the time?
I think the feelings at the time were we had to move because if we were going to be a major, I think Brian Richardson's, his ambition was always to have us as a top half Premier League side. Mm. And, the capacity at Highfield Road was only about 23,000. Yeah. And I think he realised that we couldn't continue. We had to, have a bigger stadium, and the houses around Highfield Road made it impossible to redevelop that site. So they had to look for something else. I think in retrospect, well, even at the time, I think the sale of Highfield Road was too soon because they'd already encountered problems at the site they were looking at up at Longford, where we are now. Yeah. And because of the gas situation, the gas works was there. The soil was what's the word? Poisoned. Yeah. It had to be. I can't think of the word I'm thinking of.
Cleaned up.
Yeah, it has to be cleaned up.
I think it was contaminated, weren't it?
Contaminated. That's the word. Yeah. Contaminated. Yeah. So they had to be decontaminated, and I don't think that the directors really understood the size of the problem that faced them up at Longford. Mm. Now, but I don't know the detail of the sale, but obviously McLean's came along with what would look like a good offer. It was at a time when house prices were rocketing, and maybe Brian Richardson saw it as the chance, but I think it was too soon. I really do. Because if you think about it, I think it was sold in about 98, 99 maybe. Yeah. Yeah, and yet it was 6 years before we moved to Longford, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And in the meantime, of course, we were relegated. Mm. And, the new stadium was really built on the basis of being a Premier League side. And I've always said that stadium is only sustainable for a Premier League side, football side. I really do. Mm. I don't believe, for instance, that we should be thinking about buying it. Paul Fletcher wouldn't have bought it. Joyce Apala didn't want to buy it, and I don't think Doug King wants to buy it actually, because do we know what the costs of running that stadium are? They must be astronomical.
I think it's £1 million a year.
Oh, come on. It's more than that.
Well, even more then, yeah. Just
the electricity bill will be £1 million.
Well, yeah. So what we pay in rent it's nothing to what it would cost to run it. So it's.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And then you've got to manage it, haven't you? You've got to, and it's it's one more thing for the directors or the owner to have to worry about. As long as the rent's reasonable, I think it's it's the right sort of deal.
Yeah.
Well, renting football stadiums is nothing new. A lot of the top clubs do it all around the world. They rent the stadium from councils. They don't own it. It's one less thing to worry about, like you said, Jim.
Yes.
But a question from Keith Ray. This is from Canada. Does Jim have a favourite kit and badge?
Yes. I do communicate with Keith. I've never met him, but he does communicate with me about my column, and he seems a really nice guy. My favourite kit and badge, but badges, I'm not particularly bothered about badges, to be honest. My favourite kit has to be the Admiral what they call the egg timer kit, as worn by Wallace and Ferguson, 75 through till 79, no longer, wasn't it? 81,
I think. 81, 82, wasn't it?
So that's my favourite. And we had a great team that era. I think that was one of my favourite teams. That team with Wallace, Ferguson, Hutchison, Powell, Yorath, Steve Hunt came in a bit later, Mick Coo, Jim Blythe, or Les Seeley, players like Jim Holt and Gary Gillespie, even down to Ray Graydon and Ray Gooding and these sort of players. Yeah, I like that. I like that era.
Jim, when we met way back in 1979, because my dad used to run the Warwick and Leamington Supporters Club.
Yeah.
And of course you were part of the London branch. So how did the London branch come about? I mean, ours is obviously a bit easier because we're local, but how did the London branch come about?
Well, I moved to London when I was 18 in 1971, and I thought I was the only Coventry City fan in London. I think Rod Dean came down 2 or 3 years later. So I had a friend, and we got to know a couple of others. But there was a guy called Colin Hayes, and he put a little, I call it an advert. It wasn't. He didn't pay for it in a programme when we played at Tottenham in 1976, and it said, would any London-based Coventry City fans please contact me to consider setting up a supporters club in the capital. And Rod and I saw this and go, God, there's another one. So we got in touch with him, and we had a meeting in the West End of London one night, November. Actually, it's coming up to the anniversary next week. And there were 6 of us at that original meeting. And that's where it started, and we very quickly got up to about 30 or 40. I think we had our first magazine within 6 months. I was the first travel secretary, and we used to contact British Rail, and you could get group tickets very cheaply. And the first trip was early 77. I think we played Middlesbrough, and there were 5 of us on that first trip. But very quickly, you remember that season we had a lot of home games to catch up with near the end of the season. A lot of postponements and what have you, and the numbers of travellers grew every home game. I think there were about 30 or maybe 40 for the Bristol City. Remember the famous Bristol City game? And it just went from strength to strength, really. We got a lot of help from the club. We kept on putting the advert in programmes when City played in London, and it grew by word of mouth. It was a great thing. But I was one of the founder members, and actually a few years ago they made me an honorary member. Well, and Rod as well, because we were two of the founder members. So an honorary member. And last November we had was it last November? 21? No, 2 years ago, November 21. It was the what would it have been, the 45th, something like that. Dinner, and Joyce Apala came, and Oggy came, and a couple of Mark Robbins was there. Yes, I remember Mark sitting next to Joy, and Colin Hayes, who he and the sports club fell out a few years ago over trivial things, but I managed to persuade Colin to come back for the dinner, and he was the honorary guest, and I made a speech about what Colin had done over the years, and how much we all had to owe him for what he'd done. And it was a great night, absolutely great night.
I remember that match in '79, it was QPR away. Ian Wallace scored after about 8 minutes, and then we lost 5-1.
Yes, and they were relegated, weren't they?
Yeah, well, they hadn't won at home since December. Then, of course, we turned up and gave them the 2 points in those days.
Yeah.
Clive Allen was 17, making his home debut, and scored a hat-trick, which is unbelievable. But I remember we went to the pub afterwards. I think it was the Tottenham Court Road where we went to, along there. And there was a quiz night. And I was only 14, and my dad put me in the team. And I spoke to Rod about 5 years ago now. We just bumped into each other. And he says, "Oh, I remember you." He says, "Your dad was trying to tell you the answers in Italian." I thought, yeah, that's exactly what he was trying to do.
Wonderful. Yeah, Rod was great at the quizzes. The London supporters had one of the best quiz teams in the country, especially when I turned out with them. We got to the semi-final of the national competition, and we always did well in the London and South East League. The only team that could beat us were Wimbledon, and they used to turn up all with their Rothmans under their arms and be sitting there having their halves of shandy, looking through the Rothmans to doing last minute cribbing on it. Well,
in League Two, we had a Coventry City quiz night. Juggy had arranged it through the Leamington Warwick Supporters Club, and I had an email from Rod. He says, "Can I be in your team?" And I went, "Yes, obviously." Then the other lads were saying, "Who's this Rod Dean?" I said, "Don't worry about it. We're winning the quiz."
Yes.
And unfortunately, he just couldn't make it on the night, and I thought, "Oh no, that's my trump card." But,
was that the one Michael Doyle went to?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
well, I was there that night.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I set the questions.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Well, Jim, I don't know if you know, but we've got like a question of sport thing down the Scarborough Tavern at the moment. Based on the old BBC question of sport.
Yeah.
So we have got a vacancy in our team if you want to come up and join us.
Oh dear. Where are you based now, Jim?
I live in a village called Radway near Edge Hill.
Oh, yeah, my sister's in Radway. Yeah, I know it.
Yeah. I work at JLR at Gaydon.
So right, just down the road. Yeah,
down the road. So I see Edge Hill all the time and passing, driving on the road.
Yeah, I'm about 35 minutes from Coventry, so it's not too far away.
Yeah.
So looking back over the years, Jim, what would you? It's hard to say your best ever game. So give me your top three that you can think of, memorable matches? Because you've got a great book of the ghosts of Vanish Stadium, which is really good. It's got some great games in there. But what was your top 3 matches?
Well, obviously the obvious ones like Wembley in '87, the playoff final in 2018. I think Notts County was a special night. I think Middlesbrough last season. I went to Middlesbrough to see the second leg, and that was the passion and the passion that night was just unbelievable. I don't think I'll never forget that. But if I go back, obviously the Wolves game as well. I was only 14 at the time of the Wolves game, and that was just unbelievable. To clinch, almost clinch promotion by beating Wolves after coming from a goal behind in front of 51,000 was something. But there's a game that does stick in my mind, and that was a home game against Manchester City, 1977, when Man City were top of the First Division, and we were playing well, but we were twice behind to Man City. We came back to win 4-2, and Mick Ferguson got a hat trick, and that night was something special. To come from behind and beat a side as good as City, they had Dennis Stewart, Peter Barnes, Dave Watson, all the big names. They were a damn good side. That one sticks in my mind, but there's so many, aren't there? There's so many. And the wins over, some of the wins over Man United. But I think the best wins, the best nights, best days are when you score late winners. We've had this season. We had a late equaliser, didn't we? Who was that against? At home. Anyway, we had a very late equaliser, but we've also conceded a late equaliser, didn't we? And the different emotions between those two things. Late goal can mean so much more and so much less, can't it? So it's late winners. I just love late winners.
The one that sticks out in my mind is '87 and Cyril against Tottenham at home. That was the 4-3.
Yes,
that was an incredible game of football.
Yes,
end to end. That's the one thing about John Sillett's team. It was basically attack, wasn't it? That was the whole idea. Just go forward. And I think over the years, that's probably what our problem was, especially in the top flight, was we're very good at going forward. We weren't particularly great at defending over the years.
You remember the Noel Cantwell days? We used that 69-70 season. We ground out so many results, 1-0 wins, 0-0 draws. And, I say to people these days, after we lost 4 on the bounce, when we played Stoke, I said, we need an old Cantwell day today. Just grind it out. 0-0 would do me at home to Stoke. It really would. I was happy with that, to be honest. The other game that does stick out in my memory is the night at the Dell when we drew 5-5. That was just unbelievable. I think we all lost track. We all lost track of the score that night. We didn't know whether it was. We thought we'd won. I think.
Jim, that was a bank holiday Monday, wasn't it?
It was midweek.
It's a midweek game. Was there 2 hat tricks in that game?
No.
Did Keegan score a hat trick?
No, he didn't. He got 2. I think Keith Castell's got 2.
Did Haitley get 3? Did Haitley get 3 that day?
Haitley got 3, yeah.
Right, yeah.
I remember I told my dad, for some reason, I thought it was an earlier kickoff. So I don't know what day it was. And he didn't know where I went. And I went down on my Vespa to Southampton from Hall. And then I realised, oh no, it's a night game.
Yeah.
And I had to pretend I was staying at a friend's house.
No, there weren't many City fans there.
No, well, if you saw someone with a yellow scooter, that was me.
Yeah.
There wasn't many there. I was there that night, but there wasn't many there. There wasn't many there. Ian Small says it was Norwich we got the last-minute equaliser against.
Yeah, of course.
Norwich.
Yeah.
And Robin Fletcher says his best game for him was the 5-1 at home to Liverpool. Played the Spice Boys off the park.
Yes. Yes.
I remember that. I mean, we had a few great results against Liverpool, didn't we?
We
remember
did,
the Terry Gibson hat-trick,
4-0, yeah.
Yeah, and they had a strong team out that day.
Yeah, and the year we won the Cup, 2 weeks before Wembley, we beat them 1-0 at home. And that was a very, very strong Liverpool team.
Yeah.
We if you look back at our results against Liverpool in the late 70s and the early 80s, they had a terrible record at Coventry.
They did, yeah.
There were quite a few 0-0s. We beat them 1-0 quite a few times. And we drew. Do you remember I don't know if you either remember the first game in the first division against them on Boxing Day 67 when Ian St John was sent off.
Oh, right. Okay. No, yeah. I didn't remember.
And the reason he got sent off is because he grabbed Brian Lewis, Brian Lewis gave him a real rollicking, I think, some really heavy tackling, and Brian Lewis grabbed him by the balls. St John reacted by throwing a left hook. Got his marching orders. And then the following season was the final home game, and we needed a result. And Maurice Setters and Alan Evans had a punch up in the middle of the field and got sent off. So it was a flashpoint, the Liverpool game.
Talking to referees and stuff like that, where do you sit on the old VAR business, Jim? I mean, I think you're going to say get rid of it and stick with the referee's decision on the pitch on the day.
I think so. It frightens me the time that's wasted doing these VAR checks. And that one, the Tottenham one the other week, where Chelsea got a penalty from.
Yeah.
They checked for was it offside? Was it something? It was 3 checks, weren't
it? Took too long.
I know. I do think the referees, we've seen 2 Premiership referees come down to the Championship, haven't we?
Yes.
What's his name? Anthony Taylor.
Against Preston, yeah.
Yeah, and who was the one the week before? It was...
was it Brooks?
No, Coote.
Coote, yeah, that's it.
Dave Coote.
Yeah.
Both made bad decisions. I think they almost use VAR as a crutch. It doesn't matter if I get this decision wrong because VAR will put it right, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I also think they need to just decide on one decision to look at and not 3, because it goes way too back in the actual the pattern of play. Where they check the offside, then check the push, and then check another foul. Did that happen first? Well, check the first foul first. If that was a foul, then you don't need to check the rest, do you?
Yes. Yeah. I do wonder those decisions that have gone against us, which the panel have come back later and said actually Madzin shouldn't have been a penalty, and the West Brom one with the offside. Yeah. What would have happened if that had been Man United or Man City? There would be absolute uproar, wouldn't there?
Yeah.
Absolute uproar. Yeah, it's only Coventry. It just got blown over, didn't it?
We got Ian Small mentioning great games, 77, Norwich 5-4.
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic game.
I'm notorious for missing late goals. My dad, back in the days of when we had the pub, would always want to leave 5 minutes early to beat the traffic to go and open the pub. And that was one of the games where we missed we heard the roar as we left. We thought, we scored another goal. And we didn't realise Jim Blythe had saved the penalty. So we got in the car and was listening to the sports report on the way home. completely missed it.
Like the chap at Crewe.
Yes, that Plowman, yes.
Yes.
Talking again against Norwich, I just remember, I can't remember what the score was, but I remember the goalkeeper got injured in the warm-up and the youth team goalkeeper came off. He played during the day, apparently, for the youth team, and he was sitting in the crowd and he came on the pitch and played.
Yeah.
Was that against Norwich?
Steve Murcott, yeah.
I couldn't remember his name, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. He was the youth team goalkeeper. He played in the morning, I think, at Brighton.
Yeah.
But in those days, of course, the reserve team would be playing away.
Yeah.
So Jim Blythe was number one goalkeeper. Les Seeley, if I remember rightly, was away with the reserve team up north somewhere. So when Blythe did his back in, there was only Murcott they could bring in.
That's calling out stands, yeah.
Yeah, and he never played another game.
Really?
But strangely,
did we win? We won that game. Yeah.
We did, yeah. I don't think
Ian Smalls
had a
just
shot
we
to
won
say.
2-0. Yeah.
But I think it reminded me, Murcott was the goalkeeper in a fantastic youth team. The Danny Thomas, Steve Whitten, Mark Haitley youth team. And he was the only, I know he played for the first team once, but he was the only one who didn't make it. Really?
Okay.
Yeah. The rest of them all made, quite a lot of first team games.
Is that, do you think, because we had two fantastic goalkeepers at the time with Blythe and Seeley, and he was struggling to...
I don't know. Probably, yeah.
It's just a shame that was, yeah, because I remember it, yeah. I couldn't remember. I thought it was Norwich. I weren't sure, but...
That was 78, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right, late 70s, yeah, if I remember.
78. That was just after Jim Blythe had been to the World Cup with Argentina. And his back wasn't right then.
Right.
He later that autumn he was going to go to Man United for 400,000, which is a lot of money, and the medical brought up the back problem.
Yeah,
but he'd had it in Argentina.
Jim, there's one thing I haven't touched on is your column. Can you tell the people who are listening or watching about your column and where they can read it?
Yeah. Well, I've been doing a column for over 30 years for the Coventry Telegraph, and I don't do it every week. I didn't do it this week, for instance, but I do it most weeks. It appears in the Telegraph, the hard copy Telegraph, on a Saturday. Unfortunately, they don't put it online on their website. I don't know why, but it's always been a bit of a gripe with me. But I do have my own blog page. It's called Jim Brown's Journal.blogspot.co.uk. Got that? Jim Brown's Journal .blogspot, one word, .co.uk.
Yeah, because not a lot of us buy the Telegraph now these days, do we?
No. I've got some loyal listeners. I know some loyal readers, and I know they buy the Telegraph because I get an email from them about 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning saying, great column, giving me their take on it. So some people still buy it and read it. Yeah. But I do enjoy it. And I love having questions. So everybody, if you've got a question, then drop me a line at my email address, and I'll cover it in the column. The last two I've done. Last week was a tribute to Ronnie Rees. Yeah. Which obviously it's a really sad thing to write an obituary, but it actually, I really enjoy doing them. I do a lot of research into them, and really enjoy that part of the column. And then the previous one to that was Bobby Charlton and memories of when Bobby Charlton played against the City, and reminiscing really about Bobby and the Sky Blues. Yeah.
We've got another question from Matt. What about beating Arsenal on Boxing Day in '99? What a team Gordon Strachan had at the time there.
Yeah, they were such a good team, they couldn't win an away game.
It was amazing that stat, wasn't it, that we didn't win away? That was incredible, the amount of players, the quality of the players we had at the time as well.
Absolutely. I remember going to the final away game at Watford, and Watford were already down, and they even beat us.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But historically, though, our away record was never great, was it, Jim? Really? I mean, if we won 4 games away from home, especially in the top 5, we thought we were doing well.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It wasn't great. But apart from the Campwell 1969-70, when we won 10 away games.
It's amazing, that is.
It is, yeah.
Paul Hughes, he's just messaging away. 2-2 in the League Cup, Wallace and Powell goals. Great night.
At Liverpool, yeah.
At Liverpool, yes. Yes.
That was only 4 days after we lost 6-0 at Everton.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What I remember that Everton game, Jim, was that we actually played really well and still lost 6-0. It was
I didn't go to that game. I was at the Anfield game, but I didn't go to Goodison.
A bizarre game that was. We played really well, and I think Harry Roberts was playing centre half that match because of injuries, and Bob Latchford gave him a torrid time.
Yeah, he did have some good games against us, Latchford, didn't he? For Blues and Everton.
Did he score 5 at Highfield Road? Did he, or did he get 4? I know
No, he never got 4 against us. He never got a hat either.
Oh, right.
No. Did he get a hat trick? I think he got a hat trick in that 6-0, but he never scored a hat trick at Highfield Road. No.
So have you got any books in the pipeline? Is there anything new on the horizon?
Well, there is. Is that there's a quiz book coming out, which I have compiled, but I've had nothing to do with the, if you like, the publication of it. I just provided the questions. And there's a card game coming out as well, which I've provided the questions for. They should both be out before Christmas.
Oh.
Also, so they'll be in the shops very soon then?
Yeah, they should be in the Sky Blue shop.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, they should, but I've got nothing to do with that, so don't quote me on that.
Okay.
As for proper books, I haven't got any plans. I'd like to do more, but it's just the time it takes.
Yeah.
And I've just got other things in my life which take priority, really.
Yeah.
I'd like you to do an updated breeding book because it helps with my program collection.
Well, I'm always here to help you with your program collecting, Claudia.
I know. I remember that one night when we were talking about programs, and you said, "Have you got that West Ham program, the away match where they only issued 200?" I went, "Oh, not another one I haven't got."
Yeah. They come up on eBay occasionally.
Yeah, I've got a reprint, but not the original one.
Yeah, because the game was postponed on a Saturday. I was going to the game and it was postponed, and then they produced it was 100 or 200 just for the rearranged game, but sold I think they mainly went to that director's box and that sort of thing. But
yeah.
But have you got the Ipswich 68-9 postponed program?
Oh.
I have to look for that one.
I
haven't. It's the one.
No, I've got the rearranged one of that because I remember you asked me. I looked.
Yeah.
Okay. Got some nice messages coming in for you, Jim. Ian Small says, "What a lovely guy. Thanks, Jim, for your efforts over the decades."
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, and Keith Ray said the donkey kick, without doubt, was his best goal he's ever seen. Paul Hughes, apart from the Hunt's goal, I was at all those games. Great clips. Robin Fletcher, this is brilliant. What great knowledge. Cov Andy says, thank you, Jim. I was 9 in 1972 and made my dad take me to all them games until I was at the age I could go on my own. Well, that's what it's all about. Yeah, you know, it's
another game that's come to my mind. Talking about the Campwell days, it was a great performance. The year we qualified for Europe, we drew 0-0 at Everton, who they were the champions that year. I think we were the first team to stop them scoring for months. And it was just a rearguard action led by Roy Barry, who just had the best game of his life. And I don't know if you remember a chap called Brian Hill. He was the arch marker. Jimmy Hill used him as a marker, and so did Campwell. If there was a danger man in the opposition, Brian Hill used to mark them. He always marked Dennis Law out of the game. Dennis Law, I don't think Dennis Law ever scored against the City. And that day, he put him on Alan Ball, and he snuffed out Ball, and Bill Glazy had a blinder, Roy Barry had a blinder. It was backs to the wall in the green and black stripes. A wonderful performance. Wonderful.
Yeah. Can we have Jim on every week? Says well, I'm not sure he's got time to come on every week. He's a very busy person.
We might be able to negotiate something.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. What are the recollections of Tom English, Matt? This is from Matt. Remember Tom English?
Yeah,
he had a great partnership, didn't they? Him and Haitley.
Tommy English. He was in that youth team I talked about, you know, with Murcott. Played alongside Haitley, and he actually broke through to the first team really before Haitley. I think they took him on tour to Scotland pre-season as a sort of a raw youngster, and he scored a few goals, and he was straight into the first team at the opening game of the season. He scored quite a few goals that season. But you know, the competition was so tough. You had Wallace and Ferguson. You had Gary Thompson coming back from a broken leg. You had Haitley and Tommy English. It was, you know, we had so many strikers. So if a striker didn't, you know, he stopped scoring, he was out because they were queuing up to take his place. And I think I've got a feeling Tommy went off the rails somewhere.
Yeah,
I think he went off the rails, and
he dyed his hair a few times, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
And his nickname was Shaky, wasn't it? Shaky Stevens. It
was it?
Yeah. I used to like Alan Green. He was another one as well.
Yeah, there you go. He was still there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a good forward.
If you look at that 79-80 season when Tommy broke through, you look at the reserve team, the reserve forward line put out. You know, we had, you know, Gallon Green, Mark Haitley, Gary Bannister, Steve Whitman, Ray Gooding, even Steve Hunt. You know, he was dropped. You know, in those days. Ferguson couldn't get a game because of his injury problems, and that last Wallace. It was Wallace's last season. He wouldn't sign a contract, so Gordon Milne dropped him. We had some fantastic youth teams, reserve teams that season. I think they scored 90-odd goals, 96 goals. The reserve team.
Yeah, so this is the problem now. We don't have a reserve team, do we? Now it's all under 21s and so. And I miss the old reserve.
Yeah. Do you remember a lad called Clive Haywood?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I think he only played one first.
He didn't play many games, did he? No.
He got 2 hat-tricks in a month for the reserves. He was hot, absolutely hot. But he couldn't get in the team.
Mental, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. Keith Ray, I'm sorry, but this is probably the best ever episode. I can listen to Jim forever.
Oh, thank you, Keith.
But yeah, I mean, there's another one here from Mark Roach. He said about you say about our away record, but the FA Cup run, if you remember, we only played one game at home, didn't we? They were all away, weren't they?
Yeah.
We don't tend to have much luck in the cup with home draws, do we?
No. No, that's very true. It's very true. Yeah. It's, winning at Old Trafford and Stoke and
all hard places. Yeah.
I think that Hillsborough quarter-final was something special as well. I thought it was better than the semi-final.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and me and Claudio were talking about this the other night, weren't we, at the 87 night when we went to the Walsgrave Club. We're talking now about how tight and compact that Leppings Lane end was. A couple of years before the actual disaster happened, and we can see how it happened because it was so tight, and and they had fences in them days, didn't they? So it was difficult to get out of the stadium, wasn't it? It would have been.
Yeah, I think both games were. Well, with the first game we were in the Leppings Lane, weren't we?
And I just remember that tunnel, and it was really tight going through, and I could hardly move then.
No, it was a death trap.
If the gates open, which they did, and loads more people come in, it would be just a nightmare, wouldn't it?
There was a semi-final Wolves against Spurs there in the early 80s, and if you watch that on YouTube, you can see the crowd that day was just it was a miracle, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But that Sheffield game, I don't know if you know, but Sheffield Wednesday hadn't lost a home FA Cup tie for about 20 years. And we were the first team to win there for a long, long time.
We were going to Hillsborough with City. We didn't do too badly there, really, did we? It wasn't
a bad.
I don't think I've never seen us. Well, no, I've seen us lose there once. That was a cup match, 3-2, I think. And Bobby Gould. That was when we played really well and we lost 3-2. So, talking about away grounds, what's your favourite away ground, Jim?
Highbury.
Right. Any reasons or?
Yeah, I just love the stadium. Yeah, and we had some good games there. We did, we won in 69-70. We won in 72-3. Tommy Hutch's goal, fabulous goal, best City goal I've ever seen. And we won there. Peter and Love got the winner there, didn't he?
Mickey Quinn hat-trick.
Yeah, Mickey Quinn hat-trick. We had a few hammerings there, but remember a 5-0 when Brian Kidd got a couple. Brian King got a goal.
6-0, 6-1 last game of the season.
Oh yeah,
that was the year after,
hat-trick, wasn't it?
Yeah, the year after we lost 6-1
at home. Paul Hughes has come on. He said, "Thanks so much, Jim. I was a member of the London Supporters Club in the early 90s. I remember the Phil Neal and Bobby Gould night, and he thanks for some lovely memories." Do you remember that night?
There were so many good nights when we've had managers down there. I do remember the first Bobby Gould night.
Yeah,
and he was sacked about 3 weeks later.
He's a very much heart on his sleeve character, isn't he, Bobby?
You got
so emotional.
You got to love him.
He's so emotional. So, looking at the club now, where do you think we're at? How do you feel about the club at present time?
Well, when you look at the crowds we're getting, the crowd, the average crowd is going to be the highest since 72-3 this season. 50 years. It's fantastic. And the atmosphere in that ground is amazing. I just hope we don't have too many bad days at home, because you feel like with the bigger the crowd, the more moaners there are. When there was 7,000 back in League Two, everybody was behind the team, weren't they?
Yeah.
Even that day against Yeovil, it was like we got that team, didn't we? That's my fear. But the club itself, I think Doug King is. It's early days, in owner terms, isn't it? It's less than a year, and I've always said, Doug's come up with some great things. I've always said, well, let's wait and see how he deals with the bumps in the road, because there will be bumps in the road, and we probably got a bump in the road right now. it'd be interesting to see what happens. Is he going to splash out a bit in the January window? He's hopefully going to stick with Mark Robins. But new owners sometimes fire from the hip, don't they? And I think that would be tragic myself. But it's early days. But obviously we've come out of the Sisu era, and it looks good. It looks good.
I've got.
I think what we've got to do, though, we have to bear in mind that even with Sisu, the Sisu ownership, we came a long, long way in 6 years. If you look back to the Checker Trade final, and Mark Robins had just arrived, and we're on our way to League Two, we've come a long, long way with that man. And you asked earlier about where do I rate him as manager? He's right up there. He's the longest serving manager in the Football League, and we've had 6 fantastic years. And you can't just look at the last 12 or 15 games. You've got to look at the whole piece, and we've come a long way.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there, Jim. Before we got to sort of close the show soon, unfortunately, but I want to ask you something, whether or not you can remember the story, but am I right in thinking way, way back in time, the club were involved in a match fixing scandal? Am I right in that?
Yeah, they were, yeah.
Can you remember much about them? Obviously, you weren't there. Can you?
No, it was before my time, 1920, Claudia.
Right.
Yeah, it was the first season in the Football League, and we had a dreadful start. We got elected to the Division 2. There were only 2 divisions in those days. So after the First World War, we somehow, with a lot of lobbying, we got elected into Division 2, and we were in above our heads, to be honest. We were in with teams like Tottenham, Huddersfield, West Ham, Birmingham City, teams like that. We didn't win a game until Christmas Day. We went 11 games without scoring in that autumn. It was a miserable season. But after Christmas, they bought a couple of players. They bought a few players, and they got their act together, and they clawed their way from a 10 points away from the 21st club. They closed the gap slowly until they were in shouting distance of staying up. And in those days, you played the same team home and away in successive weeks. And we had the final 2 games were against Bury, away at Gig Lane, and then the final game at Highfield Road against Bury. Did they win at Bury or they drew? They drew 2-2 at Bury, and they came back to Highfield Road for the final game, and City had to win to stay up. It wasn't to stay up because there wasn't a Division 3, but they would have to go for re-election, and the chances were they wouldn't get re-elected because they'd had such a miserable season. So the story eventually emerged. Well, what happened on the day is that City were losing 1-0 at half time, and the Bury chairman came in and said, you've got to buck your ideas up. You can't play as badly. We're trying to let you win, but you're playing so badly you can't even beat us. Well, it transpired later. City came back to win 2-1, and it transpired later. It took about 3 years for the story to come out. There were lots of rumours. Eventually came out that the Coventry chairman, a guy called David Cook, had bribed Bury, and the Bury chairman was involved. I think the Bury manager was involved. Certainly a couple of the Bury players, and a chap called George Chaplin, who was the Coventry captain, was involved. And the money passed hands, and Bury threw the game, and we finished 20th out of 22 and avoided re-election.
Mm.
And subsequently, Chaplin was banned from football. David Cook was banned from football, and the Bury culprits also got banned.
Wow.
It's a fascinating, it's a brilliant story, that is.
I didn't know anything about that, but I heard the rumours, but I didn't know all the details. But now I know. So fascinating.
It's a good story. Yeah, it's a good story. Yeah.
Well, look, it's been fantastic, Jim. Any more questions, Claudio? You got any more to ask, or is it about it?
I think we'll save them for another show. I think
we could go on all night and ask you questions, Jim. I'm sure you'll be there answering them. It's been fantastic. Been a fantastic show. Great knowledge. I've learned a lot myself tonight.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really have enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm glad you have. Now, talking to questions, we're just going to advertise this for. We got a question of sport, which I was on about earlier, and hopefully Jim can come and join our team at the end of the month at the Sky Blue Tavern. If you want to get your teams together, it's at the Sky Blue Tavern. It's a great night. It's all based on the old BBC programme Question of Sport, all sorts of things like what happened next and things like that. We've got video, picture board, everything like that. It's a fantastic night. Get your teams together. Get down the tavern, end of the month, 30th to 30th of November. There's £50 up for the grab for the winning team, plus a lovely trophy as well. So get your teams together. It is really a really good night. So we look forward to that. But yes, Jim, thanks very much. And hopefully, do you think they can go and win away at Millwall next Saturday?
Anything can happen. I'll tell you a story. The London Sports Club have always run a prediction league.
Yeah.
So at the start of the season, you make predictions for every game. You've got to do it at the start of the season. You can't do it game by game.
Right.
So this season, I am bottom of the table. There's 120 people in it, and I'm bottom. Really? I've only predicted one correct result, and that was at Leicester on the opening day.
Yeah.
I haven't got a single result right, let alone the scores. Yeah. You get 6 points if you get the score and the result right. You get 3 points if you get the result right. Well, I've only got one result right all season.
Wow. It's not
I'm going with my grandson, and he hasn't seen us. He's only seen us lose once away in about 20 games.
Yeah, good.
So, and we went to QPR and we won. So
yeah. And we have won at Millwall before on a couple of occasions, haven't we? So we've got not a bad record there. And we were unlucky there last year, if I remember. We were winning and we lost it, didn't we? With a couple of goalkeeper mistakes from Simon Moore, I think it was. That's ended up in, and we ended up losing. Was it 3-2 like that?
That's right. Yeah, and we should have been out of sight before.
Yeah, we were too lucky
first. Yeah,
Hayman got sent off. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Hayman got sent off.
Yeah.
Couple of more messages before we go. What a great show, says Robin Fletcher. Thank you very much, Robin. Cov Andy, great show. Thanks, chaps. Keith Ray, brilliant. Thank you. Keith Ray says the Cook 3 Spires matches. I'm not sure what he means by that, Keith. What do you mean by that? The Cook 3 Spires match. I'm not sure. But
David Cook. I talked about David Cook earlier.
Oh, right. Okay.
The man responsible for the bribe. He was a tobacconist in Coventry. That's how he made his name and money. And they certainly had 3 Spires tobacco.
Yeah.
Which was the 3 Coventry Spires.
Yes.
I didn't know about the matches, but
right, okay.
Tobacco.
Right, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Matches as in lighting matches, not football matches.
Yeah, so I thought it was football matches.
Yeah, I thought it was football matches. That's what I was trying to think. I was trying to think. But no, it's been fantastic having you on, Jim. And thanks for your time, and it's been a great knowledge. Claudio, you got anything to say before we finish?
Yeah, thanks very much, Jim. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we're going to go off air. If you can just stay on after we've gone off air.
Sure.
Yeah, little chat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you've been listening to Sky Blue Fans TV with superfan Jim Brown and Claudio as well, who's got a lot of knowledge, but I think Jim beat us both to it tonight with some of the stories we've heard. It's been a fantastic show. You can listen back, obviously, on all the social media platforms. If you want to listen back to it, we've gone on a little bit longer than we normally do, but it was as I'm sure you'll agree, a fascinating show and a lot of nice stories to listen to. We're back in action, of course, on Saturday. Our next live show is on Thursday with Miles, where we'll be getting hopefully a Millwall fan on to talk about the Millwall game coming up on Saturday. So hopefully we can go back into action after this international break and get 3 points back in the bag, which we very much needed. So all I can do say thank you very much again, Jim. Thanks, Claudio. And we'll leave you with a Play Up Sky Blues.
Play Up Sky Blues.
Good night.
Sky Blue Fans TV, for the fans, by the fans.